I do want to make sure you guys have enough time. So what I will tell you guys to use is I will ask you to identify using the half angle. So I will tell you how I want you to solve the problem. OK? So therefore, you don't need a calculator for this. You don't need a cell phone. You just need the formulas, which will be provided on the board as well as on your formula sheet. So if I was going to ask you to evaluate the sine or the half angle for sine of 105 degrees, then we can look at this and we say, well, the sine, I'm going to use theta here instead of u. Theta of u over 2 is equal to this plus or minus the square root of 1 minus the cosine of theta divided by 2. Now, there's a couple things that are very important.
Mr. McLogan?
Yes?
Could you please send Ethan Harvey to the front office for a moment, please? He'll be returning.
OK.
Thank you.
A couple things that are important that you're going to want to remind Ethan of when he gets back. First of all, these are not plus or minus problems. So for those of you that put plus or minus, it's very obvious to tell that you weren't paying attention during this lesson. You're not doing plus or minus. The plus or minus refers to the quadrant that your pi halves lies in. So if we look at this, pi halves is what is our 105, right? So we can say theta divided by 2 equals 105 degrees. Now, for the sine function, 105 is in which quadrant? 1, 2, 3, 4.
2.
Second quadrant, right? So it's in the second quadrant. Is sine positive or negative? Positive. So therefore, we're going to use the positive square root in our formula. If we were doing this problem for cosine, which we're not going to do, but if we were doing it for cosine, you would do the negative version of that. You just put a negative in front instead of the positive. OK, so it all depends on where theta over 2 lies. In this case, it's 105 in the second quadrant. So cosine would be a negative radical. Sine, though, would still be positive. Now, the problem is the formula, though, guys, has theta. We have theta over 2 is 105. So that means theta is going to be 2, or times 2. So therefore, that is 210 degrees. All right. So now let's go and plug in our formula. So we have sine of 105 degrees equals just the positive version, so I'm not going to write plus or minus, 1 minus the cosine of 210 degrees all over 2. So now we've got to figure out what is the cosine of 210 degrees. Well, the easiest way you guys remember I like to do this is think about 210 degrees, which is in the third quadrant because it's 30 degrees more than 180, right, which would be halfway around the circle. I know then since it's 30 degrees more than 180, the reference angle is 30 degrees. So I go back to the first quadrant. I say the cosine of 30 degrees is going to be square root of 3 over 2. But since it's in the third quadrant, this is a negative square root of 3 over 2. What? Why is what? Negative?
No, I know that. Okay.
So now we can go and simplify this. But now what we have, guys, is a complex fraction under a radical. Right? We have fractions within fractions under a radical. So I like to just get rid of the radical. So I'm just going to multiply or get rid of my fractions. So I'm going to multiply by 2 over 2. Another student said, can't you just multiply by 1/2 on the top and the bottom to get rid of that denominator? And yes, that would work. That is another process you could apply. Just be careful if you're whatever process you're using. Make sure you apply distributive property, guys. That's the big common mistake students have. All right, so to make sure I have enough work or room to show my work here, I get 2. This ends up being plus the square root of 3 all over 4. Now, based on last class period's lesson, is this allowed? Are we allowed to break up a radical over division? Yes, we can break it up a radical across division and multiplication, not addition and subtraction. So therefore, that's nice because I know what the square root of 4 is. Or you might see it as a multiple choice question like this. OK? So you might say it, instead of dividing, you might see it written as multiplication. Yes? Question? No question.